3, 2, 1.
Well, happy Friday, Metaverse Church podcast listeners. So good to see you, or I guess it's really so glad that you're seeing us and so glad that you're hearing our voices in your eardrums, and excited to dive into today's topic. But yeah, so look, I love to launch into these with some gimme type questions and whatnot, just to kind of prime the pumps a little bit. And last week in episode 3, when I did this, Goose, bro, I'm sorry, I did not set you up with an easy one at all as I try to get
It
you.
was not a gimme at all.
No, it wasn't. I apologize. So I will make this one super, super simple. You ready?
I doubt it, but go ahead.
Okay. Goose, what is your favorite game that you're playing right now?
Oh, that is easy. Yeah. COD, Modern Warfare 2. I've been really enjoying that. I took a step away from shooters when I got into Pop 1 in VR. I really took a step away from console shooters, and I play on my PC now. But rediscovering the fun of that has been awesome. And so yeah, that's the one I'm playing the most right now.
Right on. So the reason why I tee up this episode with that question is because we are going to be doing a deep dive into the platform known as Recroom. And what I mean by we are going to do a deep dive, I mean Goose is going to do a deep dive for us, because I am learning Recroom at this point. There are components of it where so this is what I do. I go in and I quietly just take in the environment, and I'm like, okay, let me do this, let me do that, let me see what this means. And as I do it from day to day, week to week, each time that I pop in, what I start looking for is, where's the community aspect? How do I become friends with people? And I'm building my list of like, this is how I start a church in Rec Room or VR chat or whatever. And so I'm in the process of doing that with Rec Room right now. So we're going to talk about Rec Room because you're familiar with it. And you guys, did you launch a church originally or before in there and then kind of backed off on it?
We did. We spent some time in there. So yeah, so I have some firsthand experience doing church in there for sure. Yeah.
Sweet. So I will share whatever it is that I know. We'll stick with the same questions that we've been doing
Sure.
for the other two platforms at this point. So I'll share what I think I know. In fact, that might actually be a good way to do it, is I answer the question first, and then you tell me how wrong I am about it, and then give everybody the correct information. So we'll do that. There was something else that just popped into my This is the other thing that we want to let you guys know about. Goose and I talked about this off air, and we understand that time is super valuable and it's a resource that you don't get back. So because of that, these episodes are actually going to start getting shorter in their approach, and we want to try to keep this within like a 25-30 minute range. So what that means for you as a listener and a subscriber to this podcast is, if you're wanting to know more about a platform that we're doing a deep dive on and we didn't answer your question, it's going to become super important that you start reaching out to us to ask those questions, so we can either address it in a future episode or just chat with you about it off air. So, okay. So as we always do, the very first question is, so what's good about the platform? So what is good about Rec Room? And my answer to that question is, it is stinking fun.
Yeah.
Go for it, Goose.
It is fun. Man, have they nailed the fun down. Yeah, if you like games, it's a playground. I mean, you can play paintball, you can drive cars around, and a lot of custom like games that users are able to create. Rec Room themselves have amazing games that are in there. It is super fun. The other real strength is that the user base is really broad. In fact, I don't know this for sure, but somebody in the discussion this past week said that Rec Room's actually got more users than VR Chat does. and I
Wow.
think they were basing that off of the fact that they also have PSVR support. So I don't know for sure. Either way, whether they do or they don't, there's a lot of people there, so that is a strength. They have critical mass. So those two are really really great strengths. The thematically I like it too. Overall, it's got like a cartoony feel, similar to the way Altspace does, different but similar. And I think it works. It works for what you're doing in there. It works, VR itself. It's a fun aesthetic. Yeah.
Yeah. So piggybacking off of that second good point that you made on there, um, just the critical mass aspect of it. So when we've talked about VR chat and alt space before, um, we talked about how many people use those platforms, but we never really talked about how do you access the platform. Like I can access AltSpace through the Oculus headset or Meta Quest headset, Quest 2, and I can do it 2D as well. And I know other headsets you can get in to AltSpace. VR chat, there's more options, correct? More options to get into VR chat than just like the Meta Quest or HTC Vive 2D.
Well, I mean, the primary ways are either through the Quest, which is the unattached, VR headset. And it's not the only one, of course, but that's the main one for the ones where you don't need a PC. Many of the hardcore users are going what's called PCVR, meaning they do have a headset on, but they're linking through a PC, which is actually running the graphics, and the headset's really just the monitor, and that gives you the best experience because you get the best graphics with the immersion of VR. Then there is a desktop client as well, which is somebody that's just going in, as you say, 2D on I think it's only Windows. I don't think they have a Mac client, but on a Windows machine that is basically just a 2D experience, similar to how you would play any other, first person game on a computer. So that's that's VR chat. Altspace has the same. It's got the desktop experience and the VR experience, and Rec Room has the VR experience. I'm unaware of a desktop experience, but they also have a mobile app, which none of the other ones have. I know Altspace toyed around with it at one point, but so Rec Room has a mobile experience, which is such a great idea, just for people to stay connected. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's where I was going with that. Was it seems like, from what I've heard from people anyways, it just seems like that there's more access points to Rec Room than maybe some of the other platforms. Like you said, you're not sure about a desktop feature possibly, but that's kind of what I've heard through the grapevine when it comes to Rec Room, is just the user friendliness and the user accessibility to Rec Room is just higher. So therefore you're going to have more users in there overall. So yeah, which makes it super enticing. Like if you're a church and you're looking to launch a campus, or you're a church planner and you want to get into a VR platform, a meta platform, Rec Room kind of feels like it would be what I guess I feel like Rec Room would seem like a no-brainer just because of that. But let's talk about the bads of Rec Room. So
no, yeah.
Yeah, so when it comes to the bads of Rec Room, as I'm in there, I will say, for me anyways, I hardly want to communicate with anybody in there, just because of what I feel is the demographic, and we'll talk about demographic, what I feel, and you might have a different opinion on it, but when I get in there, I'm just like, I'll go play paintball and I'll see if I can find somebody to communicate with. And there's been a couple of times where I have been, I'm like, you seem like you might be more, my age range to have a conversation with. or somebody who's like-minded. Like the past couple times I played paintball, one of their arenas, I'm like, this is a really good sniper location. And there's a dude that I've been playing with the past couple times that he feels like it's a really great sniper location as well. So he and I basically just knock each other out for that spot every single time. But I feel like if I don't want to communicate with somebody, if I'm not driven to communicate, that makes it harder to do ministry in that area.
Yeah.
It does cause me to be intentional to try to find that person, but I think that it's harder to communicate with somebody than maybe some of those other social VR platforms. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's what, if I were to hang my hat on what I feel is bad, is it's a social VR platform that doesn't feel social to me.
Well, and that's because you're not a rec roomer. That's because you, and I'm not either. And the minute when I'm in there, they know that I'm not one of them, right? And there are a lot of ways that happens. I mean, first of all, you've got ranks like floating above your head as part of your profile. Like you rank up by doing things in the game. It is a game more than any of the other ones. And so you get, you're in there with a rank of 12 and people are like, this guy's not a person that's in here. Now, sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't, but it's you right away, we stand out in there as far as that goes. It's not only little kids. The demographic is people say like, well, it's mostly little kids. And that is true. Like there's a ton of little kids in there, but it's not just that. I've interacted with plenty of adults that play Rec Room, young adults, and the community that we had for a while there was mostly, I would say, 20-ish, in that range. I'd say 20 to 29. So it was kind of a wide range, but it was in that range. And so, the demographic does vary. But as far as doing ministry in there, it's there is, you go into VR chat, you can find an avatar that works, and you can start talking with people, and it may not be apparent for a little while exactly how much time you spend in VR chat. Alt space, same thing, like that. It was very neutral in that sense. Rec Room, immediately there's a pretty big distinction as to who is usually in there, who's a regular, who's part of their community, and who's not. And so, as far as doing ministry in there, it really needs to be something where you see it as a mission field, looking to raise up that native, looking to be a part of the natives and understand the culture, and understanding that you'll never really be that culture, like you'll never really adopt it fully. But learn it enough and care about the people enough, and then that you could it could happen. It's also, again, just to the original point, it seems like a no-brainer. It is more toxic than VR chat. VR chat gets this reputation as being extremely toxic, which it's very dark, and you can get to some very dark places in VR chat. But if you're just minding your own business, by and large, it's a pretty, even if you go to the public worlds, it can get kind of hairy, but overall it's not, you're okay. Rec Room, you can easily get people coming in or interact with people or go play a paintball game that it is just the like quintessential toxicity of the internet. And I mean, I have seen I have seen grown men shaken by doing ministry in Rec Room. And they were fine in other places.
Dude, that is so fascinating to me because I haven't experienced that at all, which what that tells me is that I feel like I'm spending a lot of time in Rec Room lately, but what that's telling me is that I'm not spending nearly enough time in Rec Room, that I haven't experienced that, or I'm going to the wrong places in Rec Room. But dude,
or maybe they just like you more. I don't know. Maybe you're doing it right. I don't know. Yeah.
This is an off the cuff question that's different than what I've even asked in our previous 2 episodes. But since you've spent time in Rec Room, you guys have done ministry in Rec Room. What is the build for me a profile of the person that should go into Rec Room and do ministry that will be successful?
Yeah. Um, so there actually is someone in there that's very successful right now. He's a friend. He's a friend of our ministries. His name is Pablo, and he has a church in there and is doing really well. And is an awesome guy, awesome pastor. And it is someone with a tremendous amount of care and patience.
Hmm.
It isn't youth ministry, but man, it definitely has a little bit of the flavor of it in terms of how you just have to understand where some of the people that are in there are coming from when they are, again, the people who are there who want to learn and listen and are friendly and all that, they take care of themselves. The difficulties obviously come for the people when the people come in and they are either antagonistic or they are hurting or they're angry, and how you deal with them. And in every ministry context, the hurting people manifest in different ways. Some of it's very vocal, some of it's more subdued, and some of it's more insidious. It just manifests in different ways, and knowing how to deal with that is the key to each nuance in ministry. In Rec Room, it really is being able to very calmly diffuse someone who wants to argue antagonistically, someone who is there and just wants to troll, and cause and really cause havoc, and figuring out how to deal with that appropriately. But ultimately, it very much is the place. If you're thinking in terms of the trifold office, you've got prophet, priest, and king. The kings are the administrators, the priests are the ones who are caring for the people, and the prophets are the ones who really focused on the word itself. And Jesus obviously was all three, and we all have some mixture of those. And mostly, one is more than the others. The priests are the ones that are going to do real well in there. The ones who are caring for these lost, hurting people, and even to the exclusion of some of the other stuff, even to the exclusion of some of the administrative, like, hey, we've got a service order, we've got to stick to it, or hey, we've got to get to the word before, above all things. It's like, wait, Jesus came to actually care for the sick and the needy, so don't overlook that. That to me, I would shorthand it that way, is you definitely need someone who has that, whose heart breaks for someone who is hurting, and then go from there.
That's interesting. So, prophet, priest, king. Are you familiar with APEST?
No.
Okay, so APEST, man, I'm going to butcher this. Ephesians chapter 4, might be 5. It's one of those 2 chapters. But it starts talking about the giftings that we were given that used together really builds the picture of Jesus. So
Right.
it's the apostolic, it's the apostle,
Right.
it's the evangelist, prophet.
Yes.
Wow, way to do those out of order, Stuart. Shepherd and a teacher,
Yeah.
APES. So yeah, together, when the church is using those, they build a great representation of Jesus. So not one's better than any other. I, for instance, am an apostolic evangelist. That's my gifting makeup, which I tell people the best way for me to describe that is, I think I've actually said it here on this podcast before. I'm going to go attack the gates of hell with a water gun, and I'll just take anybody who wants to come with me. Let's go, guns blazing kind of thing. I'm going to go win kingdom territory, basically.
Yeah.
And if you're coming, you're coming. If you're not, you're not. Like, I don't have time to wait. What I hear you say in this, because you said the person who's going to do well in Rec Room is the priest, right?
Yeah.
That's what you said?
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that the person who's going to do in an APES style is probably going to be more of the shepherd, somebody who's watching over, caring for the flock. probably with a mix of, I'm going to guess, teaching, possibly. Um, I don't know. I mean,
Well,
whatever,
and
but
yeah, I guess the thing about the shepherd, and that's why I do like the also including that idea of that trifold office, because it's not a one to one. It's not like, oh, these are
sure.
versions of that. Because a shepherd, again, Jesus says our shepherd was all three. A shepherd must be organized. Like you know what I mean? Like he has a plan, he has a system, and he must care, and and then and the truth on the prophet side is critically important. So shepherding the flock in terms of delivering them truth and being organized about it and caring for their needs, that is a holistic view of the perfect shepherd, the good shepherd. And of course, whoever would go in there would need to have all of those things in some fashion. But I can tell you, for me, high on the prophet side, I've got some king side, and the priest side, I don't think I got any of it. Like, just none. That's just the way the Lord made me, and I wish it weren't that way. But I know, in retrospect, as I look at my inclinations and the way that I handle things, that part of it is just the last thing that I think about, and so delivering truth is the thing that is like first and foremost for me, um, and so, as we talked about, we were in there for a season. It was last summer. We soft launched in there, thinking, okay, let's, we wanted to be in there. We really thought we had, a community to start with in there, but we also were a little bit skeptical. We weren't sure, and just like, you know what, let's pull the trigger. Let's just do it. See how it goes. We'll trust that the Lord's going to lead us wherever it's supposed to be. And ultimately, now in retrospect, after action review, it didn't go well because, and I was the one who was in there primarily. It didn't go well because I'm not a priest. And I did my best, and we had a decent community going, but there were moments that just would arise where it needed more love than truth. It needed both always, but it needed more love than truth. And I always gave more truth than love.
Sure.
And for me, I just wasn't the right person for that. And so we said, okay, let's take a step back. Let's shut that down for now. We're not done with Recroom, but we need to just kind of make sure we approach this with the lessons that we've learned. So, so I say that, from personal experience. And you look at a guy like Pablo, who's doing really well. And man, that guy, again, he's great. He's very organized. He delivers the truth. So it's not that he's got zero in those things, but man, he cares for the people. He loves his people, and they know it. And that's why he does great in there.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. So we've already kind of touched on it, but let's just zero in on it. Demographic of Rec Room, age-wise, I would say little kids, but you've already said that you guys found a community of young adults. But
sure,
my experience isn't high on a mature audience in there. But give me what you've seen. What's the demographic for the platform?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm going and playing games, it's little kids. When we had the church going, very few of them showed up because I guess they're not, clicking around the events and thinking, yeah, let me go check out a church. So most of the people that actually came in to see the church were in fact young adults and adults. Again, mostly, I'll give a wide range, but I would say 18 to 30 was like that sort of demographic. And so we had some really great conversations, some great questions. Some people, wanting to debate and argue, some of it friendly, some of it not so much, but it was all pretty cordial. There were very few times I thought that it got really, really hectic, but there were a few moments where it was just like, this doesn't even happen in VR chat, where it was just sheer chaos of people coming in, screaming, trying to disrupt, being as funny, trying to get behind the stage, trying to glitch it out. There were some times where it was just like, this is chaos. And one of the things about Rec Room that I wasn't a big fan of is there's no external world building. So similar to a thing like Horizons, where you you must build in world. Again, it doesn't play to my strength, which is Unity. So that was one thing I didn't like. But even the moderation controls, they're very clunky. You can get it set up with roles and in world building and switches and all this other stuff, which again I never became an expert at. But man, was it a hassle to do proper moderation. And so that was another aspect of where we were like, let's take a step back and really think about how we want to approach this so that we can come at this again, in a better way. But that was another thing with as far as I would say a negative is moderation is tough.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple more questions I'll throw at you on this as we wrap up this episode. So how do you, for somebody who wants to get into Rec Room, how do you create an event for people to find to be a part of Cornerstone Church, Lakeland VR, whatever? Like, how do you do that in there?
Yeah, it's interesting. To do it right. It's not that intuitive. And I would say this just for VR chat. I mentioned this, I think, when we talked about VR chat.
By the way, I'm taking notes.
Having lots of friends is so key. It's just getting in there and doing friend requests and getting, doing that back and forth. Building your friends list is so critical, because if nothing else, when you fire that event up, you hop in, you can just spam those invites and see who shows up. So that alone is one of the most important things that anybody's going to do, is just get in there and make friends. And if you're not able to do that, that might be a sign that that's not the platform for you, because ultimately that is what you want. You want to be engaging with individuals and not just putting up an event that everybody comes, consumes it, and leaves. Like that's not the strength of this. So that's that. But there is a web-based backend that you can go in and just pop open your web browser, log in, and create an event, and you're good to go. So not terribly different than AltSpace, which has that similar type of backend. The nuance to it, though, is you want to keep using that event, because you can continually resend that event to the people who have RSVP'd for it. So you can invite all of your friends, but the people who have RSVP'd will automatically get an additional notification every time it pops up. So the way that it works is you create the event, you start getting it going, and every time you want to do another event, you go to that same event, and instead of deleting it or ending it or whatever, I forget the terminology they use, you just change the date on it. Like after it's done, you just change the date to next week, and then pop that back up, and you're good to go. So little pro tip that I got from an actual pro. That's the way that you do the events. Yeah.
So you answered my second question, and my second question was going to be, how does one do church in Rec Room? So you kind of address that through there. But I guess along in that same lane, I'll ask pretty much that same question, but instead of how do you do church in Rec Room, my question is going to be, what does it look like to do church in Rec Room? So like in AltSpace, it's event driven. For us, we streamed, you guys taught live. VR chat, pretty much live teaching for the most part, if you're going to run a service in there. But when I think Rec Room, from my experience, if I'm creating an event, I'm assuming that there's like a play field of paintball or laser tag or something like that. Like, is that what it looks like? And instead of playing the game, you guys are meeting and doing live teaching, or does it, like, how do you do church in there?
Yeah, we tried it a few different ways. We had the benefit of having one of our flock, actually create a church for us. She was a world builder,
Hmm.
and she just created the church for us, and that was, I know, not typical, but the best way to do it is to create your own world. Again, you have to do it in app, but yeah, you create your own world and you do your event there. You can certainly try to do it in one of the games, but the problem with the games is that they have a cap on how many people you can actually get in there. And
Okay.
we ran into that because I thought one of the strengths of Rec Room was going to be, and I still think it is, but I thought one of the strengths was going to be the after service camaraderie that you could get just from the natural flow of, hey, like let's go play paintball. We do this in VR chat from time to time, and it's always awesome. Which is VR chat's done, and we'll pop up a portal and be like, "Hey, you guys want to go play the Among Us game or some other game?" And it's always
Mm.
we've got people that always are like got their finger on the pulse of whatever like the fun games are to do in VR chat, and it's amazing. The relationships that you build doing that. It's kind of like the old church picnic after the service. And so Rec Room, it's a no brainer, but the rooms can tend to be a little bit small. So never really did figure that out. I would still want to, if and when we end up back in there, I would want to figure that part of it out because I think that there's a ton of potential there. Um, we were never able to show video in there, and I don't know if that's changed. I don't think that was a lack of technical understanding because we had people in there that were pros at
Yeah.
Rec Room, and they were like, "Nah, you really can't do it." Um, and so live teaching, as far as I know, is the call. Again, in the last few months, maybe things have changed, but for us, it was even if we wanted to do video, we wouldn't have been able to. It's live teaching. Beyond that, it looks very similar to the rest of them. You get in there, you preach. We will always open it up for Q&A at the end, and the discussions were where that was where the real benefit was. And it all looked like that. When it went smoothly, it looked like that. And we had some really amazing conversations in there, like really good, deep questions. And so, yeah, ton of potential in Rec Room. Just got to kind of figure out a few of the nuances.
Yeah. Sweet. All right. So that'll be our conclusion for our deep dive into Rec Room. So our send them off question. What is something that is coming down the pipeline that you are excited about? Or because my answer is going to be different. What is something that you're hoping is coming down the pipeline that you're excited about?
Um, I think what's coming down the pipeline is the answer to the alt space question is where is everyone going to go? Um, the church community there is so robust that something is gonna pop up that whether it's something that we have a hand in or someone else does, someone's going to fill that space. There's a vacuum that's there, and something's going to fill it. I don't know what it is yet, but whatever it is, I'm excited about. It's gonna be it's gonna be cool.
Sweet. This is a random pop in my head question, but there's about 20 plus churches in alt space right now. Do you see the majority of the churches in alt space? Again, this is not a Rec Room question, but do you see the majority of the churches going someplace else, or do you see the majority of the churches just abandoning ship?
Man, that's a great question and something we discuss not on the church side, but just on the people side. Um, I think there's going to be a fair amount of people that leave VR altogether.
Hmm.
There's a concern that we have, particularly for the people that we are shepherding and caring for, losing losing that connection is something that we're worried about. And so we're trying to figure out what's the best way to remain connected with them, even if they do end up not putting a VR headset back on. And yeah, as far as churches go, man, I think that there have been, for the for the churches that are sort of all in on it, you know, we all are going to go somewhere. We're going to take the resources that were dedicated to alt space and move them somewhere else. And I think actually from, what you had said previously, I actually think that might actually ramp up the effort for some,
Yeah.
even us. I even think for us, I see that. So I think there's going to be a net gain from all of that for those who stay in it. I think for some who are on the fence, then I think it could. Yeah, I think this is going to go either way. I think some are going to fall on the side of the fence again, like you said, which is, hey, it's time to go somewhere else. Let's actually kick this into high gear and go all in. And I think others are just going to say, yeah, this wasn't what we thought it was, and we're out. And that's okay. I mean, it's I'm sad if anyone leaves the space, but at the same time, it isn't for everyone. It's just not everyone is called to every single mission field. And if you're not called to a mission field and you're trying to go there, it won't end well if God's not in it. And so we certainly need more churches in the space, but we need the ones that are called. And so, yeah, I can see some churches dropping out.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I would have asked that question for our bonus episode, but it just popped in my head, and I was just wondering, thinking about it. But so coming down the pipeline that I'm excited about, again, this is probably more of something that I'm hoping for because I'm just curious how they would do it. But with AltSpace shutting down, which was a Microsoft product, what I'm hoping for that will excite me, I'm hoping Apple gets in the game, and I'm expecting Apple to get in the game, especially with them wanting to launch a headset. It's really the realm that they haven't started to play in yet. I don't see the purpose of Apple creating something that is VR and AR if they're not going to create a platform to showcase their product.
Yeah.
So my assumption is, if the conversation hasn't already started in Apple and somebody might have this information, if that conversation hasn't happened yet, I'd be curious to see. I'd be curious to see if Apple doesn't come up to Microsoft and say, "We'll buy AltSpace from you," and AltSpace is only shut down for a matter of months before it's reopened, repackaged, and has all new features that best fit an Apple headset. So I don't know. It's a pipe dream more than it is like a pipeline, but I have this inkling that Apple's got to get into the game.
Well, their headset was leaked, and it looks pretty amazing. What was a little disappointing was that it looks. I mean, the price tag I think was like $3,000. It looks like it's in the same vein as like Magic Leap has a headset that is amazing, but it's all B2B stuff. These guys, they're all doing this business oriented marketing, and so yeah, I was excited to hear what Apple was going to do until I saw that, and then it's like, all right, we may be further off from the consumer impact than I thought. But I like that they're, we knew they were doing something. And again, it could be, in 6 months, they could be like, oh yeah, we also have this. And it's, $150, for Apple to be $450 pair of Ray-Bans that does AR and VR and like, and changes the game completely. It can happen so quickly. And I am excited about that. I don't know, who knows when it's going to be, but I am excited about that. I don't know if I've said it here or not, but it's funny. We've seen the birth and sadly the death of a major platform in alt space. And it feels like we're so far down the road in one sense, but then in another sense, it just feels like this is all still the pregame. That like, oh yeah, no, the real thing hasn't even started yet. And Apple's a big piece of that, where it's just like, well, how can we even know what this even is if Apple's not in this yet?
Yep.
And until they are, it's just like, okay, let's just keep doing the best we can, do what our hand finds to do, as was told David, and then just wait and see when God reveals, like, okay, now this. And we're like,
Yeah.
Oh, got it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, that does it for this episode of the Metaverse Church podcast. Again, thank you all so much for just being a part of this community. Again, subscribe so you don't miss out on an episode. Leave us a rating and review so it gets out to more people. Again, if there's something that you want to know about Recroom, I even got a couple more questions that are popping in my head right now that I'm going to have to talk to Goose about off air. But if you have questions about any of the platforms that we have talked about thus far, or you got questions about some of the ones that we haven't even talked about yet, please send us an email at metaversechurchpodcast.com so we can address those things. And yeah, just leaving that rating and review, what that does is people who are exploring the metaverse, those next steps help get this to their feed so they can begin their process of just exploring the metaverse and seeing what the church is doing in it. So again, thanks for being a part of this, and we will see you next week for another episode of the Metaverse Church podcast. Till then, be blessed.